Hello, hello, hello. I am Grumm, your season analyst for the third season of the BBR D-League, and I am bringing you the latest in weekly analysis and news for the BBR D-League. Before we get into our latest week here, week 3, let's take one last look back at week 2 through my predictions, and we can see that I got something in between these years here. Last week I went 1-3, correctly picking DashingSceptile, Bope, Mario B, Pup, Vortex, and Tonyy all to win. However, I did incorrectly pick CJ, Crep, and A12 to get the win. So overall, 6-3, not bad, double as many right as I had wrong, bringing me to 11-7 on the season. So I do appreciate that I got those 11 games right, because it makes me seem smart. It makes me seem smarter than I actually am, I think. But I do appreciate those games. And as good as a performance I had as predicting, these three Pokemon had an insane performance. I'm talking about Oslo City's Metachamp. I'm talking about South Bend's Moltres, Gallade, and I'm talking about the Manshine City Necrozma's Quackaball. Quackaball, who ended up getting the most votes in my community post, asking who was your week 2 MVP. And I'm going to tell you right now, I was very, very happy with the results because, look, I just think that it's very good to get the community's opinion. So I appreciate those. And I'll be putting them up time and time again following each week's performance, probably Mondays after the Monday nights, Tuesday mornings, one of the two. And I appreciate all who vote there. I appreciate your opinions. And as we continue to advance and evolve the analyst content that I have here. Before we get into this week's slate of games, we did have a couple coaches making some drastic, not necessarily drastic, but some impactful moves. We're going to look here first at the Carolina Tauros heels. Shadow Gallade dropping Hatterene and Dugtrio, picking up Cresselia and Heracross, increases the team's bulk and both sides of the defense. Unfortunately, though, you got to drop something. It comes at a cost. The overall special attack of the team, really relying on a couple players there. But overall, it helps the defenses, which should help Carolina correct course a little bit early in the season. Then we have Phoenix, coached by CJ Jensen, dropping 4 total Pokemon, picking up 4, dropping Decidueye, Hitmontop, Bellibolt, and Pyroar, adding Chestnut, Electivire, Hisuian, Typhlosion, and Dunsparce, which I like this a lot here. It helps that special defense, and it doesn't cause too much of a difference between the type interactions. Overall, I like these moves for CJ, who's also looking to get a win in the column this week. Next to the Decidueyes, the Drunken Fist Decidueyes to be specific, and Coach PokemonProfessor, not Professor Pokemon, but look, it's either. I think either one works, but the PokemonProfessor is the official name, dropping Duraludon, Clefairy, and Ribombee. So dropping 3, picking up 2, and adding Araquanid and Comfey, which I really like. It improves the team's defensive stats, but it does double down on Tornadus as the only special attacker. But I do like it overall. Your special defenses get raised. You don't lose a Weber, and you don't lose a Fairy type. Actually, you probably get a better Fairy type. I think Comfey is better than Ribombee as a Fairy type. Mmuffinz making some drops here, dropping Salazzle and Arboliva, and picking up Vileplume and Porygon 2. I like these moves. Vileplume should end up being more respected in the team builders to prevent, these toxic spikes. Look, roll the clip. Getting the toxic spikes a week after would be ridiculous. If I'm gonna get up. I'm gonna get up and walk away for a second. I can't do this. Come on! Why are we doing this to him, huh? Come on! Come on! Why? Yeah, so I think that's a better poison type, grounded poison type specifically for Mmuffinz. And then Porygon 2 keeps those teams' defense looking strong. Also will be a great support to take some hits. Salazzle did not stay on the unemployment line for long, as the bundle Montreal TJP dropping Hippowdon, Leafeon, and Chandelure, picking up Toedscruel, Spiritomb, and Salazzle, which sacrifices a bit of physical defense in bulk to add another spinner and increases the overall special defense and gives Montreal, the bundle, a fire type in Salazzle. I think it's beneficial. We'll get to that when we talk about their matchup. But those are your transactions this week. let's get into the previews. We're going to start, actually, with a game between two really good coaches. I'm very excited for this matchup. We have the Montebello Mexica and the Miami Palafins taking on. After seeing Tone turn his offense into defense and Mario prove it that he's more than just click the Excadrill button, I think this is really fun. For the Montebello side of things, the Excadrill button is going to get clicked. It's a very good matchup here. It is an odd spot, though, because Terra Fire would let it hit Vikavolt for super effective damage, but it then puts it in trouble against a Jet Punch Palafin and some other stuff. It could run Terra Water to not get taken out by Palafin, but then the Vikavolt hurts it, and you can kind of like take up a half, maybe Fairy type, go with that there. But overall, I think Excadrill's Terra is going to likely be more of a double up on a stab than be think of defensive ways, right? Offensively, Clefable, I talked about Fairy, joining Excadrill on the offensive side of things. I think an offensive Clefable could be really good here. Fairy type is decent in this matchup, and the resists in the Cinderace and the Metagross could find themselves in bad positions elsewhere in this matchup that help Clefable this week. I really like offensive, Life Orb, Magic Guard, Calm Mindsets are really good there. I think the Clefable would be very helpful offensively this week instead of being a defensive check. Defensively, though, Sinistcha is a very strong matchup. It should be able to come in safely in this matchup against multiple Pokemon. Should be able to take hits, recover them off, also threaten to do some good damage. It gets Matcha Gotcha, but if you want to, hit something with a burn chance and actually land it, Scald is also an option for Sinistcha. Plus, the Strength Sap is always good. And it threatens Miami's got an overall weakness to go, so it can be defensive with a little bit of an offensive threat to it. I actually do think Dragalge is a solid pick for this week for Montebello. Its typing is good to check most of the threats that Tone has. I think more importantly, though, it forces Lilligant to be like a Psychic or a Ground type or an Ice type to hit it really hard. And that might not be the best for Lilligant. So it opens up a lot of roads for Mario, but either way, it tends to force the Lilligant to be Terra right away. Get out of that Terra, because that's not a great matchup for it. As far as the Winmon, I do want to point out that Urshifu is also pretty solid this week. Dark type is pretty strong into this matchup outside of the Overquill, but the Overquill is wary of that Excadrill matchup, and I think it's really beneficial to Mario to kind of maybe build around the Urshifu win con this week. Tone, on the other hand, we're not looking bad here. Tone has been waiting for a week like this for Palafin. Palafin's first week, it can really cut loose and have a really good time, and he's got it in this matchup. Pure power, I think, is the goal here, not the ability. Just go raw, 252 adamant, and you're just clicking buttons. Obviously, maybe you do want to go with a jolly nature, but you got Jet Punch. Just click it and go. I think you'll be all right. I do think last week that Garchomp was defensive-minded. I think this week it should get a chance to also let loose a little bit. It's Mario, for having a Sand team, the downside of having a Sand team or a team with Sand Central Pokemon, it is weak to ground types. And the combo of Garchomp and Palafin should put a lot of stress on Sinistcha and Clefable to be checks. And if Mario does run a offensive Clefable, that's not great either. Defensively, I think Overquill is a must for Tone. It is a dark type that is not weak to fighting type, so it really helps with the Urshifu. Intimidate will help with Excadrill and Tyranitar a bit, slowing them down. But Urshifu doesn't care too much about that with Wicked Blow, but as a resisted move in close combat would be affected by that. I think that's really good. Defensively, additionally, I should say to that, whether it's Vikavolt or Smeargle, I think Tone would get a lot of value out of webs this week. Excadrill at -1, right? So max speed Excadrill -1 with a Sand Rush would not be able to outspeed Cinderace. That is a really cool thing that I looked at and I said, wait a second, okay, you could get away with that. At -1, Excadrill could even in sand, be outsped by Cinderace, who you're then hoping hits either like a Pyro Ball or is able to at least U-turn and, into the Excadrill check. So I think those are things. One of those Pokemon's got to bring those webs. I don't care who it is. I think one of them should. But this game comes down to Palafin. It's really the first week where I go, wow, Palafin looks really good here. It should be the focus point of Tone's strategy this week, even if it's just scaring out Excadrill on a revenge and just threatening flip turns. I think Palafin will be the win-mon for Miami. I do wonder how this game will go, though. Mario's team is really well week to week to do exactly what it's built to do. Excadrill has like 7 knockouts in the first 2 weeks. That's pretty good. But this is Tone we're talking about. This is the Tone we're talking about the White Gabriel Iglesias, the OG Toxic Chain, Mr. EV, your girl feeding her carbo so she moves faster on his. Okay, the Tone. I believe in Tone Hendry this week. Our second game of this week takes us to the Drunken Fist Decidueyes and the Austin FC Verdeerling. It's not an ideal start for either team, as both of these teams will be trying to get the ship right with this game. It's just a question of which one. We'll take a look here at the Decidueye first. Tornadus T looks... Well, hold on. Tornadus T is not a great slam dunk this week. It's always, I guess it's always a slam dunk, but it's like just like a solid like put back, not like a windmill. It can Terra, but unlike the last 2 weeks, its options are more like straightforward. I think Tony has a team that is really strong, especially defensively, while also having it to like against flying type is kind of solid there. So it really forces the Torn to rely on super effective Terra rather than going for raw damage. I think Petron also looks good here. It's the only Ghost Resist on Tony's team is King Gambit, who is going to want to Terra away from the Urshifu Rapid Strike, Ting Lu, and even the Arcanine. So those are, if that's your only Ghost Resist and it Terras, Ghost is looking pretty solid there. Defensively, made some changes this week. I do think for the better. I talked about it a little bit. Araquanid, Comfey, I think on the team. I think Araquanid immediately is going to pay off. Its matchup against Landorus is very good, as well as Gouging Fire. Ting Lu draws the key matchup, I think. 1v1, line them up across from each other, snap the ball, and watch them go to work. Ting Lu needs every bit of its defensive profile to slow down King Gambit this week, who I think has a good week ahead of itself, so that Ting Lu is very huge. In an effort to keep you guessing, though, and to keep the analysis fresh, I actually think the Pokemon to build around is actually Urshifu Rapid Strike for Professor this week. Able to hit everything neutrally, including the Registeel and the Landorus for super effective damage. So it just really depends on that King Gambit Terra. I think Urshifu should have a really good week this week. Taking a look at Tony's team here, King Gambit is a surprising strong this week. Right. Obviously, you have Urshifu who resists most of its stabs, Ting Lu who's a bulky horse, and Torn who can Terra. But King Gambit can really get going without sacrificing some teammates. There's you have 2 Intimidators. Petrant and Comfey do not want to stay in on it, so it has some clean brings ins as it's a neutral, it's neutral to Fairy, resists the Ghost type, and is immune to the Poison type for Petrant. So before Terra has clean switch-ins, Ting Lu is actually slower than it, and Urshifu has to respect its potential Terra before coming in and attacking it. So I think it's a really good matchup for King Gambit, just probably more defensive. I think pairing it with Sylveon this week seems like a strong play. The Fairy typing isn't a glaring weak point, by the way. But I think in an effort to cover the King Gambit a little bit, Sylveon can kind of come in those holes and hit some really strong, super effective Fairy moves where it can. Gouging Fire's value is defensive this week. It is bulky as hell. Urshifu Rapid Strike it can be an issue, and Gouging Fire can really resist it pretty well. It goes through Burning Bulwark, so it's not great there. But again, you can get a burn. I think Ruination hits, makes contact, so you get a burn on Ting Lu. That's huge. You get a burn on a U-turn from a Tornadus. Any of those, really good stuff there. I think it's still pretty good. You get your Morning Sun recovery, and still, you just get one Dragon Dance up and you're good. I do like Sylveon offensively this week. And defensively, it can be just as valuable, but I do want to point out that Registeel's matchup this week is as good as defensively as I have seen yet in these weeks. depending on the Terra type for the Tornadus, you could probably invest just physically and wear a vest, or you can go special defense investment to be specific, and go with like a iron defense sets, and you should be good. Clear body, it also naturally blocks the parting shot, so it forces some momentum back into your thing if you're Tony, and it is immune to poison stab, so it's really good there. I think last week Tony struggled to make it through Tone's defenses, and this week I don't think that Professor Pokemon will take that same kind of game plan. I do think early King Gambit is the key here, so that's the Pokemon to build around. Use its immense power, pair it with Defiant for, you know, the multiple Intimidate users, break through, and cook. Prediction-wise, I think it's a back and forth. I think Pokemon Professor's team could do what Tone did, where you're taking some of your very offensive Pokemon and turning them more defensively, especially like a Tornadus. And I'm excited to see like Araquanid and Comfey if they come. But I do think Tony's team is set up to break through those defenses more consistently than being stopped by those defenses. And then also on the other end, to have the defense to check and hold up long enough to secure a victory. So I'm going to take the Austin FC Verdierling in this matchup. Game number 3, we've got Carolina Tauros Heels, Shadow Gallade taking on Soulblaze and his Oslo City Dragon Dancers. I love the 4. It throws me off sometimes, but four named teams, love them. Soulblaze's team, though, is looking blessed upon by RNGs this season, and Shadow Gallade's team looking a little cursed, but did make some changes, so let's get into the Carolina side of things here. I like the Incineroar in this matchup. I think its fire typing fares very well in this matchup, and it can find a role as a wall breaker quite easily thanks to Cresselia's support as a psychic and levitating Pokemon. Added in its ability to be immune to status moves from Klefki, I think Incineroar should be really good at cracking open this game for Carolina. I think Gyarados, again, looks good here. Flying type brings a favorable matchup, especially if Raging Bolt's Terra out of its electric typing. Perhaps for like grass defensively. I think it looks good there. Its Fighting Stab also covers both Klefki and Colossal, two Pokemon who resist its flying type. And this week with Rillaboom on the other side, you could get away with like rocking maybe a Grassy Seed Acrobatics set instead of running Brave Bird. Then you're pretty good there. You can get your defense up, and you can get your double your attack, a 110 0 drawback flying type move. Really good stuff. Plus it would then boost its Trailblaze. Shadow Gallade made 2 moves that originally had me kind of scratching my head a little bit to understand them, but after really looking at it and then going back and watching his 2 games, I understand them. So that's why it's important to watch each coach's point of view every battle, because then you learn stuff. Swapping out Dugtrio and Hatterene for Heracross and Cresselia did remove a fairy type from the team though, and that is important because it also doesn't address like the ghost weakness, meaning that Ogerpon is going to have to really rely on its embody aspect ability when it terras to deal with the Gengar, because otherwise that Gengar looks pretty good. Soulblaze also has been taking names with this Metachamp. It has been insane, and it's top 10 in the knockouts for the season. It's early, but still top 10. It's pretty good. So if I don't see Corviknight matched up one-on-one with that thing, I am going to my Twitter and Blue Sky, and I'm going to start tweeting at the Carolina Tauros Heels like I'm a deranged fan begging for change. And I feel awful for saying Zapdos this week after the last week and the week. Its matchup is very strong in a way that fellow fighting type Heracross can't quite match. But instead of Zapdos, I'm going to get away from Zapdos a little bit. I'm going to say that Corviknight is the Pokemon you kind of build around this week. Not because it's just Metacham. Also Rillaboom, Landorus, they both struggle against this Pokemon, which I think means that you need to build a team that can help Corviknight stay alive and take some of those hits for those powerful Pokemon. That is going to be the key for Shadow Gallade this week if he wants to get the win. Taking a look at Oslo on the other side of things, I work at a cemetery. I'm putting my contacts in. I'm calling the morgue because Raging Bolt's matchup is going to slaughter Carolina's roster. I mean this as objectively with no rooting interest, no, just looking at this. Both Dragon type and Electric type, there's a little bit of exposure there for Carolina. And then that means Raging Bolt, has two of its two natural stabs already covered. It is free to click buttons this week because it can go ice and flying, which are also top offensive options this week, and defensive options, I should say, for flying as well. Just really good stuff there. Inteleon, because Raging Bolt looks so good, I do want to point out, like, somebody on the fringe of offensive. Inteleon can actually cook this week. It doesn't handle the Ogerpon very well, but there's plenty of ways that Soulblaze's team can handle that. As a proud member of the Sable squad, I need to see Inteleon cook this week. I need to see it. Defensively, Landorus is normally an offensive Pokemon, the incarnate version. This week, though, being ground flying, it will be more defensive because there's a Sandy Shocks on the other side who can't really touch it. Tri-attacks can hit it, and it threatens these Sandy Shocks. It also has their speed tied, so unless there's a booster or scarf, Sandy Shock's going to struggle on those speed ties. You don't want to risk that. Colossal is huge this week as well. If Carolina starts stacking hazards, it's going to need to come in it's got its Flash Fire ability for Incineroar. It allows it to wall the Incineroar pretty well, get those hazards out of there, help the rest of the team win the game. As far as winning this game, Raging Bolt is the key to it. I don't know how you look at any Pokemon and go, oh yeah, they have a better chance of being the winning Pokemon here. Maybe Gengar, whose only issue is the Incineroar, who you can then, build around a little bit defensively. But yeah, Raging Bolt, too good this week. Prediction-wise, I do think that Shadow made some good calls, not defensively, but addressing some of the issues with the team. I just think that the matchup is just too good into Soulblaze's side of things. Special defense is horrid, but Carolina doesn't have the special attack to really take advantage of that. Sandy Shocks is kind of it, and that gets walled by Landorus this week. Ogerpon is going to struggle against a team with Fortress, Klefki, Raging Bolt, Rillaboom. That's just struggle bus all the way. Zapdos has to come in, has to be the Pokemon you build around. Otherwise, Carolina's looking at 0-3 start. And I unfortunately think that is how that Shadow is going to start this season, as I think Oslo City and Soulblaze are going to get a win and continue to stay undefeated. Let's take a break from the analysis real quick because I want to plug my YouTube down here. You see that there? Go ahead, like, subscribe, click, ring the bell, all that stuff. Great stuff. You'll be alerted when I go live this Saturday at 8 p.m. Eastern time, Eastern Daylight Savings Time, 8 p.m. Eastern time. I never remember. Just get rid of it. Just standard time. I think it's standard. I don't remember. Either way, 8 p.m. we're going to be doing a watch along of all these games, all 9 of them, and I'm doing it at 8 o'clock. I normally said 9 o'clock, but 9 o'clock might be a little too late, and I get a little sleepy. Because we all get sleepy. It's late. It's Eastern Standard Time. And we have a good time. So come by. We watch the games. We chat. The coaches are in there. Fans of the coaches are in there. It's a good time. Swing by. Say what's up. Next up, we've got the Mmuffinz Mudkips taking on the Manshine City Necrozmas. We've got Who's Hot Streak continuing this week. Potentially. Because there's an obstacle in the form of Mmuffinz' squads that could really trip up Who. Let's take a look at Mmuffinz' side of things here. The Terra Captain of Annihilate is off to a slow start. Currently sitting outside the top 25 in the league for knockouts as a Terra Captain. But this week does look strong, as there's a few options to get, few things it really doesn't need to worry about. Manshine has immense bulk. That is one thing it has to worry about. But this Pokemon has the ability to Terra as a steel or a poison type to avoid being poisoned by a Clodsire who could reliably check it. Or it could just run as a Terra Ice and go right through it. It renders the bulk meaningless of like a Clodsire. Also there, I do like Delphox. Talk about the Clodsire a little bit. It's got enough this week for me to mention it. Fire Psychic hits everything neutrally, and its move pool does include Dazzling Gleam and Shadow Ball, which gives it Fairy and Ghost, which allows it to hit everything on the team super effectively, except the Terrapagos and Crocodile, but that's okay. I think Delphox could take advantage of some mons investing more in physical bulk for the Annihilate this week. Defensively, Who showed that it's not just a stall over there. There's a lot of power under that hood. There's a lot of power under that hood. And while Quaquaval can Terra into, say, grass or electric type to be an offensive thing, So Vaporeon's ability is going to stop it from spamming the Aqua Step is huge. Its general bulk elsewhere in this matchup is good, but obviously if it's a Terra Grass or Electric Quack, then it gets a little trouble. Scizor, man, Mmuffinz kind of has miscast Scizor as a defensive Pokemon. I talk about how it's a good defensive Pokemon stat-wise, and it still is. It's got good defense, physical defense. It's got great typing, but it really needed to be a defensive Pokemon here. Defog to remove various hazards from this team, as well as being able to take hits from the Latios and the Tinkaton. You got to have it to be a defensive Pokemon this week, despite it wanting to be offensive. As far as win Pokemon for Mmuffinz, last 2 weeks have been putting, little rough spot for Mmuffinz out of the gate, but I think this week is a huge week for the Delphox, and Delphox is very important. It's faster than all of but 2 of Who's Pokemon, so getting out early, getting it aggressive will be a big help to Mmuffinz this week. Taking a look at Manshine's side of things, welcome to this week's Darkrai Plus presentation. Darkrai does look good here. The 2 Dark Resist being Crocodile and Diancie, the former being weak to Ice Beam, and the former finding a tough matchup this week in general. So Scarf to potentially outpace a Scarf Latios or a sub setup is my bet for Darkrai. And I really tried to find a second Pokemon here offensively that looks good. I just think Brambleghast could do a lot offensively, similar to how it did in week 1. The only counter is the Porygon 2. But Crook is weak to its grass type move. So that's really the dark type resisting the grass type. Not great there. A defensive set for Bramble could turn offensive, but you could also use, put a wide lens on it and get great usage out of Poltergeist. I was about to say Poltergeist and Power Whip, and be able to hit them with a little bit more consistency. Defensively, I think Clodsire is the best answer to the Annihilate that this team has. Unaware to ignore setup would be very good. It has Toxic, so you can chip out its health without stacking those Rage Fists. Very huge. It also would help with a setup Scizor or a setup Latios on maybe it's a Combine Latios and goes for a Draco and you ignore that a little bit. That wouldn't be bad. I think more to help the Latios is the Mandibuzz, who's dark and flying typing and bulk is going to be really big. Latios, Crocodile, Delphox, all put in tough spots against this Mandibuzz. And if they try to focus on breaking through Clodsire, Mandibuzz should be able to come in and support that face of evil that is Clodsire. If Clodsire can chip away the Annihilate without stacking Rage Fist boost, I think that makes the game much easier. And I think trying to set that up, whether it's through Toxic or Hazards, very big, especially if Mmuffinz, brings the Vileplume for Toxic Spikes. That'll be really helpful for Mmuffinz, but that means it's one less Pokemon. I don't know what Vileplume does in this other than that, which is still a very good thing. Very good thing. Prediction-wise, you'd have to be a fool to go against Who's hot streak as of late. Short of who's really biggest enemy, biggest op is Who. That's about it. But I've never claimed to be a smart man. There is something about this matchup that I'm looking at when I look at Mmuffinz' team, and I'm struggling to see a consistent path for Who to victory that doesn't involve hoping that Annihilate just is the wrong Terra. That could happen, but I also don't know. I don't think it'll be easy, and I'm not ruling out Mmuffinz is in a win here. I don't want to be considered a fool though, so I'm gonna pick Who in the Manshine City Necrozma to get the win. Next up, we have the Phoenix Incineroars taking on the Bundle Montreal TJP and CJ Jensen. 2 teams looking to get their first win of the season, hopefully getting their season back to life a little bit here. Let's take a look at Phoenix. Offensively, I said that last week that Flygon had a really good week. I didn't lie. It was true. But this week's even better. Listen to me. This week is even better as the only ground immune Pokemon is Dragonite, who obviously is weak to Dragon type. The only Fairy type is Pheasantipity, who, while immune to Fire Dragon type, is weak to Ground type. So it's a very good matchup for Flygon. And I think Terrorzarude became this season's first Terra Captain to not make a starting lineup. I think that was an important lesson felt. Like, I think that it was an important lesson learned because it was very surely felt that it was missing, right? This week, it looks like I think CJ is going to remedy that feeling because there's several options, but maybe just go Terra Ghost to remove its fighting weakness and just hit everything neutrally and hit everything neutrally. I mean, everything on that team between Grass, Dark, and Ghost, but especially Ghost. Defensively, TJP added Salazzle and also has the ability to Terra Boulder into a fire type, meaning that Blastoise, I think, is really going to be needed in a big way this week. It's the only reliable fire resist. Its bulk on both sides of the defense will help against both of them. But more importantly, it's a Pokemon that could eat hits and rest off potential toxic shenanigans from Salazzle. I think that's very big. And I think obvious defensive Pokemon for CJ was hard to find. I landed on Jirachi, though. It's steel typing. Being able to slow down Iron Bundle in this matchup is huge. It's also resistant to both of Boulder's natural stabs, both of Pheasantipiti's stabs, and Dragonite stabs. Obviously, it can still get toxic, but it's immune to the poison from Salazzle. I think it's vital this week to soak some hits for the team. I think defensive Jirachi is big. And while it is rough go of things for CJ this season, Zarude really hasn't been getting its shit in. And I think that is a saving grace if your CJ is like, well, if I get this Pokemon going, I'll be good. I think choosing the right type is huge. But if CJ wants to get a win and start climbing out of this hole that he created, Terra Zarude has got to come this week and get going correctly. Taking a look at Montreal and TJP side of things, Salazzle did not stay on the streets long, and that's because TJ needed a fire type, and what a matchup for it this week. Only being outsped by Weavile this week, Salazzle's fire typing looks great, and it can poison typing, can hit the Enamorous for super effective as well, so it's very good this week. And I mentioned in the defensive things for CJ that Terra Fire Boulder could be a thing, but I think Fairy provides a more powerful matchup this week because other than Jirachi, it can hit everything with super effective in Rock, Psychic, and Fairy, and it gets coverage in the form of Earthquake for Jirachi, so you're pretty good there. Defensively, welcome to the team Toadscruel. Congratulations. Now get out there and go spinning because another spinner was really needed by this team. Also, the ability to just sport anything that's not a grass type and just be a problem in general as a special defense soaker. This guy is going to do wonders for TJ this week against the likes of Enamorous, Flygon, and even it gives Electivire problems other than that Ice Punch, it could have. I think Hisui and Gudra is also going to appreciate having a supporting Pokemon next to it that's not weak to fighting types and also resists ground types, which is really good, meaning it can do what it does without worrying right now. Just walling shit. And this week, against a Hisuian Typhlosion who can attack the ghost weakness of the bundle Montreal, I think that is very, very important. I think after the changes opened up the team a little bit, not to be reliant on Avalugg spinning, I think we're going to see some good stuff from Toadscruel, but I think the bigger newcomer is Salazzle. I think it wasn't in the best place on Mmuffinz' team as a second fire type and a primary grounded poison type, but this team, it's better. It's the only fire type. It is not the primary poison type, so that's very good. I think a good showing from Salazzle would get MrTJP into the win column for the first time this season. I think the two teams made some big changes. I'm excited to see which Pokemon come and contribute right away. I think Salazzle is big in this matchup, but ultimately I think Zarude having multiple ways to impact this game, as well as having Flygon to really clean up after it. Good things there. I think CJ's changed glaring holes, but I've taken CJ 2 weeks in a row, and I don't want to. I can't do it again. I don't think it's going to be enough as well. I think TJP and the Bundle Montreal overcome all that stuff and get the first win of their season. Up next, we have the Arkham City Delibirds and A12 taking on the Chicago Grookies and their coach, Vortex A12, a victim, feeling the wrath of HOO, otherwise known as Hyper Offensive Opposition, aka who? While Vortex evened up their record. Looking at Arkham's side of things, finding a Pokemon who loves this matchup was a tough one for A12, but I think the first in line with a lot of enthusiasm is the Lord's fattest bear, Ursaluna. Point me to the Pokemon on the other side of things that want to take a Guts boosted Facada Earthquake. You can't. And if Ursaluna is going to be the first mon at the buffet, it's going to need some support on offense, either in the form of Trick Room or more likely a Lightning to its Thunder as a fast hitter who can get in and out. And I can't think of a better Pokemon in this matchup than Jolteon, who only needs Gliscor to remove its ground typing to be free to Volt Switch around without a thought. Defensively, if last week was any show, once Hydrapple kind of tears, it's tough to go against water types, and Primarina and Gyarados being on the other side could be an issue. That's where Suicune comes in, right? That's where Suicune's best ability this week is walling those Pokemon, taking hits, soaking them up, and just spreading just little chips here and there. Conkeldurr was a huge player in week 2, as well as Lycanroc for Vortex. So that makes me think that both Slowking and Bronzong should be able to be enough power to really withstand their onslaught. Maybe even get some hazards up, maybe a Trick Room or two as well to help the rest of the team. I think those two Pokemon, key defensive Pokemon. But the key Pokemon overall is the Bear. Ursaluna has the ability to be tanky and threatening, and it's needed this week. Getting back on track with a huge performance would be great for both Ursaluna and A12. I think for Chicago, though, offensively, Primarina looks really good. More so than Gyarados, thanks to Prim having a more useful secondary stab with its fairy stab. But don't worry, maybe Gen 10 they'll let let the big guy have a physical flying move that makes sense for it. I also like offensive Gliscor this week. Double it up its stab with a Terraflying Blast, or build around its flying type with an acrobatic set. It would let it hit everything sans levitating Bronzong, which is good, especially against the Howlucha and the Iron Valiant this week. Defensively, while I said that Gyarados was not good, defensively, it's pretty good this week. Intimidate's really good for Chicago this week. It can turn offense on a dime with a Dragon Dance, but I think a defensive set built around like taunting Slowking and Bronzong and just a slower Pokemon in general, using Thunder Wave on the faster Pokemon would be beneficial for Vortex. I think Rotom Heat can help Gyarados out this week later, or in the latter department of spreading status. It's only Suicune really is resisted and threatens it, really. It can run Pain Split to take advantage of some bulk investment from like an Ursaluna. Could also run Scarf sets to trick and ruin, your Slowkings, your Bronzongs, or even Ursaluna before it can get off its guts ability. You get the idea, right? I think the Primarina is the Pokemon to build around. I think Primarina can find a way to get set up in the middle of this game and really just let the game get away from A12 and in favor of Vortex. Depending on the Hydrapple set, you get to Calm Mind up, and Jolteon may not be able to break it, and that can just really, really hurt A12's chances. But you're taking one of the oddest defensive profiles in the league in A12s, and you're putting it up against one of the best in Vortexes. I think this is going to end up as one of those like 4-0 games that really feel like a 2-0, 1-0 game. With that being the case, I think that scenario fits A12 squad a little bit more, and I'm going to pick the Arkham City Delibirds. Did you guys know I got a Patreon? If you don't, check it out. Patreon.com/Grumm, link in the description below, or just go to support.grumm.tv. It'll take you there. I put up these videos a little early, my graphic work, stuff like that, and also additionally content and looks at my content that I do there. I really need to like flesh this part out a little bit more and explain a little bit better what I'm doing over there. But if you go over there right now, you can see a little bit of a preview of a project I'm working on. At least script-wise, I am trying to make Pokemon viable that are currently not viable in any format. And I'm trying to make 1 or 2 changes to make them viable, or at least more viable in each set, or each form of competitive Pokemon play. So check that out, a little bit of a preview there over at support.grumm.tv, or just go down to the link below and check out the Patreon. I'd be so appreciative that you do that. Just check it out. For as low as $1, you can become a patron there, and it goes from there. But I just appreciate you checking it out. Now let's get back to these previews. Starting off our final trio of games here, we have the Cleveland Guardians taking on the Seattle Sigillus. DashingSceptile has started the season on fire behind Roaring Moon, and Bope is looking to get above 500 early in the season here. Let's take a look at Bope's team, the Cleveland Guardians, as well. Offensively, both teams do not have glaring holes on their defensive profiles, but Bope's Terra Chi-Yu may just be able to create one with its Terra. Terra Fairy or Terra Flying gives it super effective damage against either the Roaring Moon or the Infernape, Pokemon that could check it. I think that's very good for it. Triple Water in this matchup also isn't bad, right? Also isn't bad for Cleveland, but Greninja is the only Pokemon who really gets to thrive in this matchup of the water types, mostly thanks to its protein ability, giving it something to hit Roaring Moon for super effective damage with an Ice Beam, turning into a Terra, but a protein ice type, giving it stab there would be beneficial. Defensively, another water type, Azumarill is one of the few Pokemon that Roaring Moon has trouble with, and while Thundurus T could fry it alive, being able to check Roaring Moon, this Roaring Moon, Dashing's Roaring Moon, is good. Rotom's bulk is the only thing, though, that saves this team from Ursaluna Blood Moon, right? I look at the Ursaluna Blood Moon on the other side. Whew. It's got the ability to run wild on Cleveland this week, that Ursaluna Blood Moon, and Rotom is going to help that a little bit, just bulk-wise. It's immune to ground type, but obviously can still get hit by a Blood Moon or a Hyper Voice. And Thundurus could also have trouble with Rotom this week, but yeah, you need as much health as you can have for the bear. Winmon, boy, nothing like it. Terra Chi-Yu. Last week, Terra Fire proved throwing another 100 horsepower on Chi-Yu is not a bad idea. A Ferrari even. I mix up my comparison there. Though I think this week is more thought is maybe needed for the Chi-Yu's Terra type to give Cleveland a winning chance. Maybe not. Maybe you don't need to throw 100 horsepower on the Ferrari. Maybe just need to tighten the corners a little bit. As far as Seattle's side of thing, Ursaluna Blood Moon looks good. Did you get him for the Rotom part? Aside from Skarmory, who, like last week, matchup against the Corviknight, doesn't like to see Thundurus on the other side, Ursaluna can mangle the other side with either of its stabs, and I think it does a better job this week than it did last week. And I'm trying to think of a type for Necrozma. It's 127 special attack could just work wonders against this team. But thanks to Cleveland's strong type matchups, it's kind of hard to find the right one. Terra Electric could work. It lets it hit Skarmory and Greninja for super effective stabs and the rest of the things, but it's tough. It's a tough matchup for the Necrozma, but I think it should come. It's very strong. Defensively, Weezing is a must here this week. Removal purposes, really, if anything. Glimmora and Skarmory can be a bit overbearing with hazards, and also its ability to threaten the Whimsicott. I was going to say Wishcast. The Whimsicott and wall the Iron Hands a bit. Weezing, Galarian Weezing is a must. I also struggle to think about a check for the Greninja, but Empoleon's pretty solid. It also has the ability to check, not wall, but check the Azumarill. I mean, you can run like a superpower. Also, adding its ability to get up rocks of its own against a team whose only removal option is Glimmora. I think that's a pretty good matchup for the Empoleon in this matchup, and that's a good thing for Seattle. I think Necrozma is vital to the win, though. I do think Ursaluna, strong threat, but Necrozma is the key to victory. If you can get it the right Terra to beat Chi-Yu, cool. But it has to be a Terra that requires Bope to throw a couple resources after it, and that's a good thing for Dashing. Prediction-wise, I think both teams are balanced and each have like one exploitable stat, so the matchup should be pretty close. I think 1-0, 2-0 victory is not out of the realm of possibility. I guess my guess is that Bope comes away with this. Chi-Yu's a hard problem for Dashing this week. Throwing an AV on a Roaring Moon to deal with it might be the best call of option, but then you're throwing an AV on a Roaring Moon, and even then Chi-Yu might just tear into Fairy type and then chew it up anyway. So I don't know. Anything to slow down the fish for Dashing is in its favor, but I don't see that happening. I think the Cleveland Guardians get a win here. Up next, our second to last game of the week, the South Bend Snowflakes taking on the Twilight Slashers. Pup has used the power of Pogworm to his benefit. That's my words, not his. Jumping to a 2-0 start, while Crep in the fashion show has hit a snag a little bit after an impressive week 1. For South Bend here, Moltres was very good last week. Very powerful win with Moltres, and you'd think that would be the Moltres game. But this week could very well be the Moltres game. The only flying check is Iron Crown, who's weak to its dark type. So Moltres could just do it again. Although Umbreon could be a problem, that is where Great Tusk and Sneasler can come in. Between the two of them, they're good to take care of everything else that Moltres could struggle against, especially the Great Tusk. I think as a keeper of the tomes of the Pogworm way, let me just say this. Defensively, Metal Burst Earthworm. Aside from doing a decent job of getting hazards up this week, it could also use the Metal Burst to really counter a Superior who otherwise Earthworm would be used as setup fodder, and it kind of punishes and flips that check a little bit. And you're like, oh, wait a second. I actually do think, though, that a bulkier Assault-vested Iron Moth might be the play for Pup this week. Its base typing can deal with Superior, Blaziken, and Umbreon, and Alchemy's strategies. So you can just hold on to that Terra for a late game matchup, either against the Salamence, Iron Crown, or Melodic, or just don't. You don't need it. And it's just there as a threat. I think Moltres got let loose last week. Let it loose again. I just think the key, though, really is Great Tusk breaking through specifically the Umbreon, but some of the other Pokemon on the other side to allow Moltres to really, really thrive this week. Taking a look at Crep's side of things for the Night Slashers, it's a favorable matchup this week for specifically Salamence's Terra of choice, because Earthworm can be a problem, but I could also see just running like a special-minded set this week. Throat Spray Hyper Voice, giving its Flamethrower a boost while still getting Moxie boost to up its offense. To give it Earthquake powerful results. Could be cooking a little too much. I could be cooking a little too much here, but that Earthworm goes down. Earthquake looks pretty solid there. I also wrote these notes at 1 a.m., so give me a break. I also like the Hisuian Zoroark this week, especially with the Umbreon being a great check to Moltres. It can disguise itself as the evolution to bait a Great Tusk or Sneasler into a fighting move and hit it hard with either of its stabs. Defensively, I mean, yeah, Umbreon's pretty good. I took a Terra-boosted Bleak Windstorm from Tornadus T like it was nothing, and there's not one of those this week. So I expect a lot of support and a lot of disruption from Umbreon this week. On the other side of the defensive aspect for Twilight, Weezing really serves two purposes. Stop Sneasler, stop Great Tusk. That's it. Levitate helps that. It can also serve as a wall to both the fighting types while spreading vital Will-O-Wisps to Pup's physically strong team. Those are very important statuses. The win, though, comes down to Hisuian Zoroark's ability to hit run this week, I think. If Crep can maneuver the Zoroark around, letting it get some hits, keeping it kind of fresh so that it's like, oh, hey, like, is that Zoroark? And continuously make Pup think, is that the Zoroark? Can I click a fighting move here? Can I click a dark move? Like, should I click a dark move here? I do think Salamence is also important. I think the Ghost Normal type is hard to beat, though. And I think that's the way for Crep to get the win here. I was firmly in the camp of this being a Pup win. I love the matchup for Pup. Until I looked specifically that Crep hits this matchup. Crep hits like a truck in this places where Pup does not want to be hit. Special defense. And I don't think that's good. Superior, Zoroark, Iron Crown, Alchemy, even a Blaziken or Salamence can pull a special this week and go off. Overall, I think Crep pulls this match out by a slim margin, and that means the Twilight Slashers are going to get the win. And in our last matchup, we've got the Hamilton Torracats and JarlTheKing taking on the Steamy Stunfisk and HunkyDonkey. That's HunkyDonkey, but I like to say HunkyDonkey because I like how it sounds in my earballs. Starting it with Hamilton, I like Heatran this week. It struggles defensively. Oh boy, does it struggle defensively, but offensively, it hits a lot of things for a lot of damage, and that's a good thing because I don't really like this matchup offensively for Jarl. Thundurus looks like the best help out there, really only struggling to hit Iron Treads, which Heatran can hit super effective with fire moves. Again, it's a Sun team, so that even helps Heatran a little bit there. I think Jarl's defensively is solid against Walking Wake, though, right? As offensively, it doesn't look great defensively. This got the special bulk type matchups. Walking Wake has to open itself up to a poor matchup with a Terra to deal with the likes of Florges, Cobalion, and Samurott, and I think all of that is good for Jarl. The struggles, though, do come in the form of Iron Treads, though. That, again, I've said it a couple weeks now. Iron Treads looks good. It's a good Pokemon. Use it as the Pokemon it can be. With 2 weeks in a row, we've seen special, and I'm not saying that's not cooking. I'm just saying this is a Pokemon that's a physical Pokemon. Let's start clicking some Earthquakes here. Just 8-gun click Earthquake, and the Pokemon that would just come in on it do not want to take Ice Spinner by any means. Like, Palisand is really the only Pokemon who can stand up to a Iron Treads, and that's not great for Hamilton. I think Heatran is a must big-time performer this week. Last week, Jarl struggled to get going early. Perhaps played a little too passively at times, and it kind of cost him. But Heatran has to be, I'm saying it has to, look me in the eyes. Look me in my eyes. Look in my eyes. What do you see? A Heatran offensively. That is what I'm talking about, okay? Steamy Stunfisk side of things, though. Walking Wake does look off, but it can Terra still, which is good and bad. I talked about it. It's if it goes to a Poison or Steel type to hit Florges, then it opens itself up somewhere else. If it goes Electric to hit the Water types, bad thing there. The bad news is, though, that it is outright that the tearing up basically opens up the Heatran. So that's maybe Wake's Terra does not happen until very late game. And I mentioned Iron Treads in the Hamilton side of things. Again, it's really good. But Meowscarada, I want to take a mention too, because who else can use its Protean ability like it this week? It can give itself Stab Ice moves, which deal super effective to most of the things that would check it. It can also go Fighting coverage, take Cobalion and Heatran for super effective Stab. It's really good. So as good as the Iron Treads is next to it is the Meowscarada defensively. Rotom Wash looks very strong here. The only concern I have is the Ogerpon, who has a horrid matchup everywhere else. Like, I mean, so I think Heatran can be a consistent, or I think Rotom can be a consistent Heatran check. And we saw bulky Slitherwing last week, and we could see it again this week. If only to punish Samurott and to keep momentum on the Steamy Stunfisk side of things, whether it's a U-turn or just a first impression or Leech Life, I think it'd be really good to see a bulky Slitherwing. The Winmon, I think it's Rotom. Rotom Wash is the key to victory this week. Heatran is slow, but could easily get a Flame Charge or just be Scarf, and it would let it speed type Meowscarada, and then it's a coin flip between Meowscarada and Heatran, and I don't know if you want to take that chance. So Rotom, more than capable this week of keeping Heatran in check, while also helping the team elsewhere with status and momentum as well, because it's very hard to stop the Volt Switch from the Rotom consistently enough. I like Hunky's team here. I am biased, though. As Ogerpon Terra is a fun Terra captain, right? I have it in another league. Not Terra, but it's Grass type. And it's only Grass type. And there's, on average, in this matchup, too many bad matchups for it. But this week, especially with the Slitherwing impressions, first impression Slitherwing, U-turn Meowscarada, and more things, it is hard to pick a team when their Terra captain has such a bad matchup. And in Open Terra, that is saying something. I'm going with the Stunfisk to clear us out for this week, to wrap up the week here. You can see the predictions there on the bottom of your screen, underneath me, right down here. Look at all of them. That's who I'm taking this week. If you want to take it, remember, I'm 11-7 this season. I went 6-3 last week. If the pattern holds up, I'm going 7-2. Right? Only 2 of these games I got wrong, and I don't see 2. I'm going 9-0 this week. I'm calling my shot. 9-0. I get all these games right. Okay? And we find out on Saturday when these videos go up line as well. There will be I'm sorry for hitting the microphone. I'm closing this out, so I'm not going to restart this stuff. There is a playlist. This isn't a part of a playlist. The playlist link will be in the description below. You can go watch on Saturday. If you're watching this Saturday during the day or whenever, you can go watch all the videos there. You can also go to the BBR Discord. They'll be posted in there. And on Saturday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here on YouTube and on my Twitch, we will be live streaming every game, reacting to them, all the games, not all 18 point of views, but all 9 games, so you can see if I got them right. You can appreciate that here, and I would appreciate if you like, subscribe, and ring the bell here on YouTube as we continue to grow stuff. I got stuff coming down the pipeline that you can see some little bit of previews if you go to support.grumm.tv. That's the Patreon, patreon.com/Grumm, link in the description below. Join my Discord as well if you want to. I appreciate it. Go down there. All the links down below. But I appreciate you guys nonetheless helping out, watching this, leaving a like. Maybe I'll come up with like a question of the week thing. Maybe I'll do that. Also, let me know what you thought. The community post, I put the little MVP things. Let me know what you thought about that. And maybe I'll start incorporating that into these. I probably should. Maybe I'll go back and do that. maybe after I'm done recording this, I'll go back and do that. So now that you've seen this, if you've seen this, you can go back and see. You'll be like, oh wow, okay, cool. I'll hold up. If you know what, I will do 2 thumbs up while I'm talking. I'll just lift them up randomly, and that'll be it. And you'll be like, why did he do that? Talking about something nonchalantly. And now you know. Now you know. So I appreciate you sticking around. And if you did stick around, comment below. Just 2 thumbs up. I appreciate it. I am Grumm. I am your season analyst for the BBR D-League Season 3. And I am going to be out here. I'll see you guys Saturday night. And if I don't see you Saturday night for the watch-along, then I hope I see you next week. And if no one has said it to you today, let me be the first one to say it to you. I love you. Peace.